The auditorium was still buzzing with excitement even though the ceremony had ended 20 minutes ago. Graduates in their black caps and gowns were everywhere, hugging each other, taking selfies, and posing for family photos. Parents were crying happy tears, siblings were complaining about how long everything took, and friends were making plans to celebrate later. It was chaos, but the good kind, the kind that happens when people are genuinely happy. But sitting near the back exit, away from all the celebration, was a young woman named Claire Mitchell. She was 22 years old, wearing the same black graduation gown as everyone else, with honor cords draped around her neck that marked her as one of the top students in her class. She'd just graduated with a degree in computer science, finishing with nearly perfect grades. 4 years of late nights, difficult projects, and pushing herself harder than most people could imagine. She should have been celebrating. Instead, she was alone. Claire sat in her wheelchair, her phone clutched in her hand, staring at the text message she'd received just as the ceremony was ending. The message was from her father, Richard Mitchell. It was shortened to the point the way all his messages were. Emergency board meeting in Singapore. Can't make it. Sorry, sweetheart. We'll celebrate this weekend, promise. Love you. She'd read it 5 times already, and each time it hurt just as much as the first. This wasn't new. Her father was the CEO of a massive tech company, Mitchell Industries, and he was always busy. Always flying somewhere. Always in a meeting that couldn't wait. Always promising they'd spend time together later. This weekend, next month, when things calmed down. Things never calmed down. Claire had cerebral palsy. She'd been born with it, and it affected her legs and her balance. She'd been using a wheelchair since she was 7 years old. Her mother had been the one who was always there when she was growing up. Every doctor's appointment, every physical therapy session, every school event. Her mom had been her champion, her biggest supporter, the person who told her she could do anything she set her mind to. But her mom had died of cancer when Claire was 12. It happened fast. One day her mom was complaining about being tired, and 6 months later she was gone. After that, it was just Claire and her father. Except it wasn't really. Her father threw himself into work, building his company bigger and bigger, and Claire learned to be independent. Maybe too independent. She'd told herself it was fine. Her father was dealing with grief in his own way. He was providing for her, making sure she had everything she needed. The best schools, the best medical care, a beautiful home, anything money could buy. And she appreciated it, she really did. But sometimes, like today, she just wanted him to show up. To be there. To see her accomplish something amazing. Around her, the celebration continued. A group of girls near the stage were taking turns throwing their caps in the air, trying to get the perfect photo. A family of about 10 people had surrounded one graduate, everyone wanting to get in the picture. An older couple was crying while hugging their son, probably the first person in their family to go to college. It was beautiful, all of it. But watching it from the outside made Claire feel even more alone. She glanced down at her phone again, thinking about calling her father. But what would she say? That she was hurt? That she needed him? He already knew that, or he should. And he'd made his choice. The board meeting in Singapore was more important than her graduation. The company was more important. It was always more important. Claire started to wheel herself toward the exit. She just wanted to leave now. To get back to her apartment and change out of this gown and maybe watch something mindless on TV until she felt numb enough to sleep. She'd worked so hard for this day, dreamed about it, and now she just wanted it to be over. Getting through the crowd was harder than she expected. People were everywhere, not paying attention, and she had to navigate carefully to avoid running into anyone. A few people glanced at her as she passed, and she could see it in their eyes. That look. Some people saw the wheelchair first and her second. They'd move out of the way quickly, sometimes too quickly, like they were uncomfortable. Others would smile at her with this overly sympathetic expression, like they felt sorry for her. She hated both reactions equally. What most people didn't know was that Claire had worked twice as hard as probably anyone in her graduating class. The campus wasn't always accessible. Some of the older buildings didn't have ramps or the elevators were broken. She'd had to plan her routes carefully, leave earlier than everyone else to get to class on time, and deal with the physical exhaustion of pushing herself around all day. And that was just the physical stuff. There were the stares, the questions, the assumptions people made. Some people talked to her like she was a child. Others assumed that because her legs didn't work well, her brain didn't either. She'd had to prove herself over and over, work harder to be taken seriously, push through the frustration of being underestimated, and she'd done it. She'd finished at the top of her class, earned internships at major tech companies, and had job offers waiting for her. But right now, sitting alone while everyone else celebrated, none of that felt like it mattered. Claire finally made it to the main corridor leading to the parking lot. It was quieter here, less crowded. She stopped for a moment and took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. She would not cry, not here, not where people could see. She'd learned a long time ago to save her tears for when she was alone. She pulled out her phone and opened her photo gallery, looking at the pictures from earlier. A friend from one of her classes had taken a few photos of her before the ceremony started. Claire in her cap and gown, smiling, holding up her diploma. They were nice photos, but looking at them now she could see the sadness in her eyes even though she'd been trying to hide it. She'd known even then that her father probably wouldn't come. He'd warned her last week that something might come up. She should have prepared herself better. The worst part was that she understood on some level. Her father's company employed thousands of people. The decisions he made affected families, communities, entire economies. She got that his responsibilities were huge, but understanding it didn't make it hurt less, especially today. Claire put her phone away and continued toward the exit. As she passed a large window, she caught her reflection and stopped. There she was, a college graduate, someone who'd overcome obstacles most people couldn't imagine, someone with a bright future ahead of her. But all she could see was a girl sitting alone at her own graduation, wondering why she wasn't enough for her father to stay. She shook her head, trying to clear away the negative thoughts. Self-pity wouldn't help. It never did. She'd learned that early on. The world wasn't going to give her special treatment, and she didn't want it to. She just wanted to be seen, to be valued, to matter to the people who were supposed to love her most. Claire was about to push through the exit doors when she heard footsteps behind her. Someone was walking quickly, like they were trying to catch up. She turned her wheelchair around, half hoping it might be her father, that he'd somehow made it after all. But it wasn't. It was a man she'd never seen before, probably in his 40s, wearing a suit that had seen better days. He had kind eyes and an expression that was somehow both apologetic and determined. "Excuse me," he said, slightly out of breath from jogging to reach her. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I couldn't help noticing you were leaving. Did you graduate today?" Claire was surprised by the question. She didn't know this man. Why did he care? But there was something genuine in his voice that made her answer. "Yes," she said quietly. "Computer science." The man's face broke into a warm smile. "That's wonderful. Congratulations. That's a tough program. You should be really proud of yourself." Claire looked at the stranger standing in front of her, unsure how to respond. She was used to polite congratulations from professors and classmates, but this felt different. This man had actually chased her down just to say something nice. It was unexpected, and in her current emotional state, it almost made her want to cry again. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. "I am proud. It was a lot of work." The man nodded enthusiastically. "I bet it was. I'm David, by the way. I'm here for my daughter. She just graduated with a psychology degree. I'm still looking for her in this crowd, but I saw you leaving and—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "You looked like maybe you could use someone to talk to. I hope that's not too forward. My wife used to tell me I was too nosy for my own good." There was something about the way he said it, with that self-deprecating smile, that made Claire relax a little. He wasn't pitying her. He was just being kind. And right now she needed kindness more than she wanted to admit. "I'm Claire," she said. "And no, it's not too forward. It's actually really nice of you." David looked around the busy corridor, then back at her. "So where's your family? Someone should be here taking about 1,000,000 pictures of you right now, embarrassing you with how proud they are. That's the parents' job at graduation." The question hit harder than he probably intended. Claire felt her throat tighten. She could lie, make up some excuse, but for some reason, she didn't want to. Maybe it was because he was a stranger, and she'd never see him again. Maybe it was because she was tired of pretending everything was fine. "My dad couldn't make it," she said, trying to keep her voice neutral. He had a work emergency. He runs a big company, so these things happen. David's expression shifted. It wasn't pity exactly, but understanding. Like he actually got what she wasn't saying. That must be really disappointing, he said simply. Especially today. It is, Claire admitted, surprised at her own honesty. But it's okay. I'm used to it. Being used to disappointment doesn't make it hurt less, David said quietly. Trust me, I know. There was something in his tone that made Claire curious. Before she could stop herself, she asked, "What do you mean?" David leaned against the wall, and for a moment he looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the long graduation ceremony. My wife left when our daughter was 3. Just decided one day that being a mother and a wife wasn't what she wanted anymore. Packed her bags and moved across the country. I've been raising my daughter on my own ever since. I'm sorry, Claire said, and she meant it. Thanks, it was hard, especially at first. There were so many times when I felt like I wasn't enough, like my daughter needed more than just me. All those school events where other kids had both parents, dance recitals where I was the only dad, in a sea of moms, father-daughter dances where I had to figure out how to do her hair. He laughed a little. I got pretty good at ponytails eventually. Claire found herself smiling despite everything. That must have been tough. It was. But you know what I learned? Showing up matters. Being there matters. Even when you're scared. You're doing it wrong. Even when you're exhausted, even when there are 1,000 other things you could be doing. Being present for the people you love is the most important thing. He looked at her meaningfully. Your dad should have been here today. The simple statement, said without judgment, but with complete conviction, broke something open in Claire. Someone had said out loud what she'd been feeling, but had been too afraid to voice. It wasn't okay that her father had missed her graduation. It wasn't something she should just accept because he was busy or important or whatever excuse he'd give. Yeah, she said softly. He should have been. They stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of celebration echoing from the auditorium behind them. Then David straightened up, and that determined look came back into his eyes. You know what? I have an idea, and you can totally say no if you think it's weird, but hear me out. He pulled out his phone. No one should leave their college graduation without at least one good photo to remember this day. Would you let me take your picture? Just a few shots of you in your cap and gown with your diploma. Something you can look back on and remember what you accomplished today. Claire hesitated. Part of her wanted to just go home and be alone with her disappointment. But another part of her, a bigger part, didn't want this day to end like this. She'd worked too hard, come too far, to let it all be overshadowed by her father's absence. Okay, she said. That would be nice, actually. David's face lit up. Great. Let's find some good lighting. How about over by that window? The natural light is perfect. For the next few minutes, David took photos of Claire. He wasn't just snapping random pictures, though. He actually put thought into it, suggesting different angles, telling her when to smile, when to look serious, when to hold up her diploma. He made her laugh with terrible dad jokes about graduation. What did the graduate say to the other graduate? He asked, while lining up a shot. I don't know what. We did it. Now we're broke and unemployed. He grinned. Wait, that's not funny. That's just reality. Ignore that one. Claire laughed, a real, genuine laugh that felt good after all the tension. David captured it on camera. That's the one, he said, looking at his phone screen. That's the photo you'll want to remember. You look happy. Actually happy, not fake graduation photo happy. Can I see? Claire asked. David came over and showed her the photos. There were about 15 of them, and Claire was surprised by what she saw. In the photos, she didn't look sad or alone. She looked confident, accomplished, genuinely happy. The honor cords showed clearly. Her smile was real, and somehow David had managed to capture her in a way that felt authentic. These weren't stiff, formal graduation photos. They were moments. These are really good, she said, slightly amazed. Thank you, really. You're welcome. I'll send them to you. What's your number? As they exchanged contact information, a young woman appeared at the end of the hallway. She was in her early 20s with a bright smile and the same kind eyes as David. "Dad, there you are. I've been looking everywhere for you." She stopped when she saw Claire, her expression immediately friendly and open. "Oh, hi. Sorry, am I interrupting?" "Not at all," David said. "This is Claire. She just graduated in computer science." "Claire, this is my daughter, Rachel." "Computer science, that's amazing," Rachel said, genuinely impressed. "I could barely pass my basic technology requirement. You must be so smart." Claire felt herself blushing. "I just really like coding. It makes sense to me in a way that other things don't." "I wish it made sense to me," Rachel laughed. "I'm more of a people person. That's why I went with psychology. I want to help people work through their problems." "Rachel's going to grad school here in the city," David added proudly, "starting in the fall." "That's wonderful," Claire said, and she meant it. There was something about Rachel that was immediately likable. She had this energy about her, warm and inclusive, like she could make friends with anyone. David quickly explained the situation to his daughter, how he'd run into Claire and offered to take her graduation photos. Rachel's expression immediately softened with empathy but not pity. There was a difference, and Claire appreciated it. "Well, we definitely need a group photo then," Rachel declared. "Graduating class solidarity. Dad, get in here too." "Oh, you don't have to," Claire started to protest, but Rachel was already positioning herself next to Claire's wheelchair, putting her arm around her shoulders like they'd been friends for years. "Too late, it's happening," Rachel said cheerfully. "Dad, use my phone, it has a better camera." David set up the shot, and the three of them posed together. Then Rachel insisted on taking some of just Claire and David. "Because he took such nice photos of you, you should have one with him to remember who the nice stranger was." They ended up taking several more photos, trying different poses, making funny faces, being silly. Something shifted during those minutes. The heavy sadness that had been sitting on Claire's chest began to lift. She was laughing, really laughing. And for a little while she forgot about her father's absence. These two people, complete strangers an hour ago, had given her something she desperately needed. They'd made her feel like she mattered, like her graduation was worth celebrating, like she wasn't alone. Other graduates started to notice the impromptu photo session. A couple of Claire's classmates from her computer science program wandered over, curious about what was going on. Rachel immediately invited them to join, and soon there was a small group of people taking pictures together, sharing this moment. One of Claire's classmates, a guy named Tyler, who'd been her partner on several projects, looked at her with surprise. "I didn't think you were staying for photos. I thought you'd left." "I was going to," Claire admitted. "But then I met David and Rachel, and they convinced me to stick around." "I'm glad," Tyler said sincerely. "You should be here celebrating. You worked harder than any of us." The compliment caught Claire off guard. She and Tyler had a good working relationship, but they weren't close friends. The fact that he'd noticed her effort, that he'd said it out loud, meant more than he probably realized. The afternoon sun was starting to slant through the tall windows of the university building as the group of graduates continued their impromptu celebration. Claire found herself at the center of it all, something she never would have expected an hour ago. Tyler had called over a few more people from their program, and Rachel seemed to know everyone somehow, pulling people into conversation with that natural warmth she had. Someone suggested they all go out to eat, to celebrate properly. There was a restaurant near campus that a lot of graduates were heading to, a place known for cheap food and strong drinks. Everyone looked at Claire expectantly, waiting for her answer. "I don't know," Claire said hesitantly. "I should probably get home." "Come on," Tyler urged. "When are we all going to be together like this again? Most of us are moving away for jobs. This might be our last chance to hang out." Rachel leaned down and spoke quietly, just for Claire. "You don't have to if you really don't want to. But I think it might be good for you. You've spent 4 years working hard. Give yourself a few hours to just enjoy what you've accomplished." Claire looked at the faces around her. These people, most of whom she'd only known in the context of class projects and study groups, genuinely seemed to want her there. And Rachel was right. She'd spent so much time focused on grades and proving herself that she'd rarely let herself just relax and be social. Okay, she said, making the decision quickly before she could change her mind. Let's go. The walk to the restaurant was chaotic and fun. The group had grown to about 15 people, all in various states of still wearing their graduation gowns or having taken them off. Someone started a chant of "We did it," and soon everyone was joining in, drawing amused looks from people on the street. Claire found herself laughing at the absurdity of it all. David walked beside her wheelchair, making sure she could navigate the sidewalk easily. He did it subtly, without making a big deal of it, just shifting the group's path when needed or pointing out a curb cut ahead. It reminded her of how her mother used to do the same thing, always aware but never hovering. "You have a really great daughter," Claire told him as they walked. "She's so easy to talk to." "She is, isn't she?" David said proudly. "I can't take all the credit, though. She's just naturally empathetic. Even as a little kid, she was always the one making sure everyone felt included on the playground. Used to drive me crazy with worry because she'd befriend anyone, including the mean kids trying to understand why they acted that way." "That's a gift," Claire said. "The world needs more people like that." "It does. I just hope grad school doesn't burn her out. Psychology programs can be intense and she takes on everyone's problems like they're her own. I keep telling her she needs to learn boundaries, but she's stubborn like her old man." They reached the restaurant to find it already packed with graduates and their families. The noise level was incredible, everyone talking and laughing at once. The hostess took one look at the large group and the wheelchair, and quickly worked to push some tables together in a corner that would accommodate everyone. As they settled in, Claire found herself sitting between Rachel and Tyler. Across from her was David and a few other students she recognized from campus. The conversation flowed easily, moving from funny memories of difficult professors to panic about entering the real world to dreams about the future. "So what are you doing next?" Tyler asked Claire. "I know you had like 3 job offers. Which one did you take?" Claire felt a familiar tightness in her chest. "I'm actually starting at Mitchell Industries in their software development department." "Wait, Mitchell Industries?" Another classmate chimed in. "That's the huge tech company, right? The one with offices all over the world? That's amazing." "Yeah," Claire said quietly. "It's a good opportunity." What she didn't say was that Mitchell Industries was her father's company. She'd gone through the official interview process like everyone else, had been evaluated by the HR department and the hiring managers, and had gotten the offer based on her own merit. She'd made sure of that by using her mother's maiden name on the application, but she still felt weird about it, like people would assume she'd gotten special treatment because of who her father was. Rachel, perceptive as always, seemed to sense Claire's discomfort and smoothly changed the subject. "I'm both excited and terrified about grad school. Like, I want to help people, but what if I'm not good at it? What if I give someone bad advice and mess up their life?" "You won't," David said firmly. "You'll be great because you genuinely care." "That's more than half the battle." "Dad's required to say that," Rachel told the table with a grin. "It's in the parent handbook." The food arrived and the conversation continued. Stories were shared, jokes were made, and gradually Claire felt herself relaxing more than she had in a long time. She'd spent so much of college keeping people at arm's length, afraid to get too close because she didn't want to burden anyone or deal with awkward questions about her disability or her family situation. But this felt different, natural. At one point, Tyler turned to her with a serious expression. "Hey, I just want to say thanks for carrying me through that database management project last semester. I definitely would have failed without you," Claire laughed. "You didn't need carrying. You had good ideas. You just needed help organizing them." "That's a nice way of saying my code was a disaster and you fixed it," Tyler said. "But seriously, you're going to do amazing things. You're one of the smartest people I've ever met, and you actually care about writing clean code. That's rare." The compliments continued throughout the meal. Different people shared stories about times Claire had helped them or impressed them. She'd never really thought about how her actions had affected others. She'd just been focused on getting through each day, each assignment, each semester. Hearing these people talk about her like this, it shifted something in her perspective. Maybe she was more than just the daughter of a CEO who was too busy for her. Maybe she was more than the girl in the wheelchair who'd had to work twice as hard as everyone else. Maybe she was someone who genuinely made an impact on the people around her, even without realizing it. As the sun began to set outside the restaurant windows, the group finally started to wind down. People began saying their goodbyes, exchanging numbers and promising to stay in touch even though they all knew most of them probably wouldn't. That was okay, though. This moment, this day, was enough. Claire found herself outside with just David and Rachel as the rest of the group dispersed. The three of them stood there in the warm evening air, and nobody seemed in a hurry to leave. "Thank you," Claire said, looking at both of them. "I mean it. This day started as probably the worst day of my life, and you both turned it into something really special." "You don't have to thank us," Rachel said warmly, "though I'm really glad we ran into you. I have a feeling we were supposed to meet today." "Do you believe in that kind of thing?" Claire asked. "Fate or whatever?" "Sometimes," Rachel admitted. "I think sometimes people come into our lives exactly when we need them. And I think sometimes we come into other people's lives when they need us, even if we don't realize it at the time." David nodded. "When my wife left, I was angry at the world for a long time. I kept asking why this happened to me, why my daughter had to grow up without her mother. But over time, I realized that struggle made me a better person. It taught me what really matters. And it made my relationship with Rachel stronger than it might have been otherwise." "That's a healthy way to look at it," Claire said. "I'm not sure I'm there yet with my own situation." "Give yourself time," David said gently. "And give your father a chance to do better if he's willing to try. People can change if they want to." Rachel pulled out her phone and looked at the time. "I hate to break this up, but I'm supposed to meet some friends from my program in an hour." "But Claire, I meant what I said earlier. I'd really like to stay in touch. Maybe we could get coffee sometime. I don't know many people in the city yet, and you seem like someone I genuinely want to be friends with." Claire felt a warm rush of gratitude. "I'd like that. I'd really like that." They exchanged numbers and social media information. Rachel gave Claire a genuine hug, the kind that felt like it came from someone who actually cared. David shook her hand, then pulled her into a quick hug as well. "You're going to be okay," he told her. "Better than okay. You're going to be great. And if you ever need someone to talk to, about anything, you have my number now." As Claire watched them walk away, Rachel's arm linked through her father's. She felt a strange mixture of emotions, happiness for what had happened today, sadness that it was ending, and something else she couldn't quite name. Hope, maybe. The possibility that things could be different, that she didn't have to accept loneliness as her normal. She pulled out her phone and looked at the photos David had sent her. They'd come through while they were at the restaurant. She scrolled through them slowly, studying each one. In these pictures, she looked like someone who belonged, someone who was celebrating. Soon, really talk. What happened? Claire barely slept that night. She kept waking up every few hours, checking her phone to make sure the message from her father was real, that she hadn't dreamed it. Each time it was still there. "I'll be there tomorrow morning." She'd spent so many years being disappointed that she almost couldn't let herself believe he'd actually follow through this time. Around 6 in the morning, she gave up on sleep entirely and got herself ready for the day. She made coffee, strong and black the way she'd learned to drink it during all those late-night study sessions. She sat by the window of her apartment, watching the city wake up, thinking about what she wanted to say to her father. The truth was, she was angry. Really angry. And underneath that anger was years of hurt that she'd been pushing down, telling herself it wasn't fair to be upset with him because he was doing his best, because he was grieving too, because building his company was his way of coping. But watching other people's families yesterday, seeing the way David showed up for Rachel had cracked something open inside her. Her phone buzzed at 7:30. "Just landed. Coming straight to you. Is that okay?" Claire typed back, "Yes, I'll be here." She used the time to tidy up her apartment more for something to do than because it needed cleaning. She was always neat, a habit born from needing to keep her space organized so she could navigate it easily in her wheelchair. Everything had its place, everything was accessible. She'd fought hard for her independence, and this apartment was proof of it. The knock on her door came at 8:15. Claire took a deep breath and wheeled over to answer it. Her father looked terrible. Richard Mitchell was usually immaculate. His suits perfectly pressed, his hair precisely styled, his appearance controlled and professional. But standing in her doorway, he looked exhausted. His suit was wrinkled from the flight. His tie was loose, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He was carrying flowers, expensive ones from the look of them, and a gift bag. "Hi, sweetheart," he said quietly. His voice was rough, like he'd been crying or maybe just hadn't slept. "Can I come in?" Claire moved back to let him enter. He stepped inside, and for a moment they just looked at each other. All the words Claire had prepared seemed to evaporate. "I'm sorry," Richard said, breaking the silence. "I'm so sorry, Claire. For yesterday and for so many other days before that. You were right. What happened wasn't okay." He moved to sit on her couch, and Claire positioned her wheelchair across from him. The flowers and gift bag sat forgotten on the coffee table between them. "Why did you come back?" Claire asked. She needed to understand. "You've missed things before, important things, and you've apologized then too. What makes this different?" Richard leaned forward, his hands clasped together, and when he looked at her, Claire was startled to see tears in his eyes. Her father never cried, never showed weakness. That was his whole thing, being strong and in control. "I was sitting in that meeting," he started, his voice shaking slightly, "and all I could think about was the text I'd sent you. I kept imagining you sitting alone at your graduation, waiting for me, and then reading that message. And I realized I was doing exactly what I swore I'd never do." "What do you mean?" Claire asked. "When your mother got sick in those last few weeks when we knew she wasn't going to make it, she made me promise her something. She said, 'Richard, don't let work become more important than our daughter. Don't let building an empire mean you miss building a relationship with her.' I promised her I wouldn't, I swore it." He wiped his eyes roughly. "And then I spent the next 10 years breaking that promise over and over again." Claire felt her own tears starting. She'd never heard this story before. "Why didn't you tell me this?" "Because I was ashamed," Richard admitted. "Every time I chose work over you, every event I missed, every promise I broke, I told myself it was temporary. That once the company was more stable, once this deal was done, once that crisis was handled, I'd have more time. But there's always another deal, another crisis, another excuse. And meanwhile, you grew up without me." "I did grow up without you," Claire said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Do you know what that was like, Dad? After Mom died, I needed you so much. I needed my parent. But you disappeared into work, and I learned to not need anyone. I learned to be so independent that I forgot how to let people in. I know, and I'm sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing, providing for you, making sure you had everything you needed financially. But you didn't need money. You needed your father." They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the city continued its morning routine. People heading to work, cars honking, life moving forward. Inside Claire's small apartment, time felt suspended. "Yesterday something happened," Claire said finally. "Something that made me realize how much I've been missing. I met these people, a father and daughter, complete strangers, and the father saw me sitting alone and came over just to talk to me, to make sure I was okay. He took pictures of me, celebrated with me, included me, and I thought, this stranger is treating me better than my own father does. That's when I knew something had to change." Richard flinched like she'd hit him. "You're right. God, you're so right. I failed you, Claire. I failed your mother. I've been so focused on building this company, on being successful, on proving something to I don't even know who, that I forgot what actually matters." "What are you saying?" Claire asked carefully. She'd heard apologies before, but they'd never led to actual change. "I'm saying things are going to be different. Not someday, not when things calm down, but starting right now. I've already talked to my executive team. I'm delegating more responsibilities, setting actual boundaries around my time and making you a priority, not in theory, but in practice." "Dad, I've heard this before. I know. I know you have, and I know you have no reason to believe me. But Claire, seeing your text last night reading that you need things to change, it was like getting hit with cold water. I suddenly saw clearly what I've been doing. You graduated at the top of your class with a degree in computer science. Do you know how incredible that is? How proud I am? And I almost missed the whole thing because of a meeting that someone else could have handled." He reached into the gift bag and pulled out a leather-bound photo album. "I had this made a few months ago. I was going to give it to you at graduation. Look through it." Claire took the album and opened it. Inside were photos, lots of them, going back years. Pictures of her as a baby with her mother. Pictures of family trips before her mom got sick. Her first day of school. Christmas mornings. Birthday parties. And throughout, photos of her achieving things. Her first programming competition win. Academic awards. Physical therapy milestones. Each photo had a small caption in her father's handwriting, noting the date and what was happening. "I have been paying attention," Richard said quietly. "I know it doesn't always feel like it. and I know being present in person matters more than having photos. But I want you to know that I've always been proud of you, always aware of what you were accomplishing. I just did a terrible job of showing it. Claire's hands trembled as she turned the pages. There were so many memories here, so many moments she'd forgotten about. And throughout, evidence that her father had been documenting her life, even when he wasn't fully participating in it. "Why didn't you show me this before?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. "I guess I was saving it for the right moment, and then I almost missed that moment entirely." He moved to kneel beside her wheelchair, taking her hand. "Claire, I can't undo the past. I can't get back all those times I should have been there and wasn't. But I can do better going forward. If you'll let me, if you'll give me the chance to be the father you deserve." Claire looked at this man, her father, seeing him maybe more clearly than she ever had before. He was flawed, definitely. He'd made mistakes, prioritized the wrong things, let her down more times than she could count. But he was also here now, really here, being vulnerable in a way she'd never seen him be before. "I want to believe you," she said honestly, "but I'm scared too. I'm scared this will last a week or a month and then you'll fall back into old patterns." "That's fair. You have every right to be skeptical. So let me prove it to you, not with words but with actions. And if I slip up, if I start falling back into old habits, call me out on it. Hold me accountable." "Okay," Claire said slowly, "but I have conditions. Real ones. Name them." "First, I need you to understand that I'm taking the job at Mitchell Industries because I earned it, not because you're my father. I went through the interview process using Mom's maiden name so no one would know who I was. I got that job offer based on my own skills and merit." Richard looked stunned. "You used a different name?" "Yes, because I needed to know that I could succeed without your shadow hanging over me. And I did. They offered me the job before anyone realized who I was." A complicated expression crossed her father's face. Hurt, pride, respect, all mixed together. "I understand, and you're right to do that. For what it's—" So Claire told her father everything. About David approaching her when she was about to leave, about the photos he'd insisted on taking, about how his kindness had felt like a lifeline when she was drowning in disappointment. She told him about Rachel's warmth and energy, about how the two of them had turned a terrible day into something memorable. She showed him the photos on her phone, scrolling through images of her smiling genuinely, surrounded by people who cared. Richard looked at each photo carefully, and Claire could see the emotion on his face. "I should have been in these pictures," he said quietly. "I should have been the one making you smile like this." "You should have," Claire agreed. "But you weren't, and that stranger was. That says something, Dad, about what I've been accepting as normal and about what needs to change." "Have you stayed in touch with them? David and Rachel?" "A little bit. Rachel texted me this morning actually asking how I was doing. We're supposed to get coffee next week." Richard nodded slowly. "I'd like to meet them someday if that would be okay with you. I want to thank them for being there when I wasn't." Over the next few weeks, things did change. At first, Claire kept waiting for her father to slip back into his old patterns, to start canceling plans or getting too absorbed in work to follow through on his promises. But he showed up. Every single time, their standing Tuesday dinner became sacred with Richard actually turning off his phone and being fully present. He started coming by her apartment just to visit, not because there was a special occasion, but because he wanted to see her. Claire started her job at Mitchell Industries, and it was both exciting and terrifying. She'd insisted on working in a department where her father wasn't directly involved, and the company was large enough that most people didn't immediately connect her to the CEO. She was just Claire Davis, using her mother's maiden name, another new programmer trying to prove herself. The work was challenging but rewarding. She was part of a team developing new security software, and her ideas were taken seriously. Her co-workers were a mix of people at different stages of their careers, and while there was the usual office politics and stress, Claire found herself genuinely enjoying it. One Tuesday evening, about a month after graduation, Claire and her father were having their weekly dinner at a small Italian restaurant near her apartment. Richard had been telling her about a deal he was working on, asking her opinion on some of the technical aspects, when Claire's phone buzzed. It was Rachel. "Hey, I'm nearby with my dad. We're grabbing dinner. Want to join us? Would love for you guys to finally meet." Claire looked up at her father. Speaking of David and Rachel, they're actually nearby. Rachel wants to know if we want to join them for dinner. Richard's face lit up with an expression that was equal parts nervousness and eagerness. I'd like that. If you're comfortable with it, Claire texted back. Where are you? My dad and I are at Angelo's on 5th Street. The response came quickly. No way. We're literally 2 blocks away at that coffee shop. Be there in 10 minutes. Claire felt a flutter of anxiety in her chest. These 2 parts of her life, the new friendship and the rebuilt relationship with her father, were about to collide. What if it was awkward? What if David and Rachel judged her father for what he'd done? What if her father felt defensive? As if reading her mind, Richard reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Hey, it's going to be fine. I want to meet the people who helped my daughter when she needed someone. That's all this is. When David and Rachel arrived, Claire immediately felt her anxiety ease. Rachel came in like a burst of sunshine, giving Claire a warm hug before turning to Richard with a friendly smile. Mr. Mitchell, it's so nice to meet you. I'm Rachel, and this is my dad, David. David extended his hand to Richard with a steady, measuring look. For a moment, Claire worried he might say something about Richard missing the graduation, but his expression was kind. Good to meet you. Claire's told us a lot about you. All good things, I hope, Richard said, though his tone suggested he doubted it. Honest things, David replied simply, which is better than good things, I think. They pulled up chairs and joined Claire and Richard at their table. The waiter came over with menus, and for a few minutes there was the comfortable chaos of people deciding what to order and making small talk about the restaurant and the neighborhood. Once they'd ordered, Rachel launched into a story about her first week of grad school, animatedly describing her professors and classmates. She had a gift for storytelling, making even mundane details funny and engaging. Claire found herself laughing along with everyone else, watching as the initial awkwardness melted away. So, David, Richard said during a lull in the conversation, Claire told me what you did for her on graduation day. I wanted to thank you for that, for seeing that she needed someone and being there. The table went quiet. David met Richard's eyes steadily. I didn't do anything special. I just noticed someone who looked like they could use a friend. It was more than that, Claire said softly. It was exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it. Richard cleared his throat, and Claire could see he was struggling with emotion. I should have been there. I made a choice that day, and it was the wrong choice. I've made a lot of wrong choices when it comes to my daughter, prioritizing work over what really matters. I'm trying to do better now. That's all any of us can do, David said. Make mistakes, recognize them, and try to do better. It's not always about being perfect. It's about showing up and putting in the effort. Is that what you did when your wife left? The question came from Richard, and Claire was surprised by how direct it was. But she was also curious about the answer. David nodded slowly. Yeah, I made plenty of mistakes raising Rachel on my own. There were times I was too protective, times I was too lenient, times I had no idea what I was doing and just had to figure it out as I went. But I showed up every day. That was the one thing I knew I had to do. Just be there, be present, even when I was scared or exhausted or didn't have the answers. Rachel reached over and squeezed her father's hand. You did great, Dad. Better than great. That's generous of you to say. Considering I once tried to make you a prom dress because I thought store-bought ones were too expensive, and it was an absolute disaster. Everyone laughed, including Rachel. It was pretty bad. But you tried, and that meant everything. The conversation flowed from there, moving naturally between topics. They talked about Rachel's plans for grad school, Claire's new job, David's students, and Richard's company. At one point, David and Richard discovered they'd both served in the military, decades apart, and bonded over shared experiences of basic training and military culture. Claire watched it all with a sense of wonder. A month ago, she'd been alone at her graduation, feeling like she didn't matter to anyone. Now she was sitting at a dinner table with her father, who was genuinely trying to be present in her life, and these 2 people who'd become unexpected friends. It felt like family, or at least what family should feel like. You know what strikes me, Rachel said thoughtfully, picking at her pasta, is how much we all needed each other that day. Claire, you obviously needed support, but I think my dad needed to help someone too. He always feels best when he's being useful, you know? And meeting you gave us both something special. A reminder that kindness matters, that showing up for people matters. I never thought about it that way, Claire admitted. I was so focused on what I was getting from the situation that I didn't think about what you might have been getting from it. That's the thing about human connection, David said. It's not transactional. It's not about keeping score or figuring out who benefits more. It's just about being present for each other, recognizing that we're all struggling with something and choosing to help when we can. Richard had been quiet, listening intently. Now he spoke up. I think I forgot that somewhere along the way. After my wife died, I shut down emotionally. I told myself that providing financially for Claire was enough, that working hard to build security for our future was what a good father did. But I was really just hiding, using work as an excuse to avoid feeling the grief and fear and uncertainty. Grief is hard, David said with understanding. It changes you. There's no timeline for healing, no right way to do it. But eventually you have to choose whether you're going to let it define you or whether you're going to grow through it. I think I'm finally choosing growth, Richard said. Thanks in part to my daughter refusing to accept my excuses anymore. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. I didn't want to lose you too, Dad. That's what it felt like was happening. Like I'd lost Mom and then I was losing you too, just in a different way. Richard's voice was rough when he replied, You're not losing me. Not anymore. I promise you that.